The dust of the village road settled on her tired feet as she stepped into the land office. It was a small, cramped room, the air thick with the smell of old paper and neglect. Cracked cement walls held up shelves overflowing with forgotten files, and the old ceiling fans overhead barely stirred the heavy air. This was the kind of place where hope came to die, a familiar scene in so many deep countryside government offices. 3 men, the land officers, sat behind their dusty wooden desks, their faces masks of boredom and irritation. They glanced at her, a village widow in her faded wrapper and tightly tied headscarf, and then looked away, pretending she was invisible. She clutched a black nylon folder to her chest. Inside was the most precious thing she owned, her late husband's land document. It was her only shield against the world, the only proof of what was rightfully hers. Her husband had passed not long ago, and already his relatives were circling like vultures, their eyes fixed on the small farm that was her lifeline. She had walked for hours to get here, just to confirm the land boundary, to make sure everything was in order before the fight began. She stood patiently, waiting to be acknowledged. The officers passed a form between them, their movements slow and deliberate, a silent dance of delay she knew all too well. They whispered to each other, their low tones laced with a conspiracy she could feel in her bones. Finally, one of them looked up, his eyes cold and empty. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice flat. Her own voice was weary but firm. "Good morning, sirs. I have come to confirm the boundary of my late husband's land." She explained the situation, how her husband's family was trying to encroach on her property. She spoke with the quiet dignity of a woman who had seen too much sorrow but refused to be broken by it. The officers exchanged another look. This was the moment they had been waiting for. One of them began the interrogation, his tone dismissive. "Where is your husband?" "This document needs his signature." She explained again that he was gone, that she was his widow. Another officer chimed in, pointing at a perfectly valid stamp. "This is not the correct stamp. You will need to pay an extra fee to have it updated." They created problems where there were none, weaving a web of bureaucratic nonsense designed to confuse and exhaust her. They spoke of missing signatures and processing fees, each word another stone they hoped would weigh her down until she gave up. But she didn't. She knew the document was original, complete, and valid. Her husband had made sure of it before he left this world. She had watched him handle it with such care, telling her, "This is for you and the children. Guard it with your life." And that's what she was doing. Finally, the lead officer sighed dramatically, as if she were a great burden. "Fine, let me see the paper." He extended his hand, his expression unreadable. With a heavy heart, she hesitated for a moment, then carefully took the document from its protective folder and handed it over. Her hands trembled slightly. The moment the paper touched his fingers, his demeanor shifted. He glanced at it quickly, then, with a movement so slick it was almost imperceptible, he slipped it under a towering stack of files on his desk. He hid it, just like that. She saw it. Her heart stopped for a beat. The air in the room went still. Every sound, from the buzzing of a fly to the creak of the fan, faded away. Her expression changed. The weariness was gone, replaced by a fire that had been smoldering deep within her. It was not the loud, explosive anger of a youth, but the deep, quiet rage of a matriarch who had endured a lifetime of injustice and would not endure one more. She took a step forward, her bare feet silent on the dusty floor. Her voice, when it came, was no longer just firm, it was a blade. "Give me back my paper." The officer feigned ignorance. "What paper?" "I have already told you, you need to come back next week." "We are busy." The other 2 officers nodded in agreement, their faces set like stone. They tried to wave her away, to dismiss her like a troublesome child. "Go to another department. This is not our problem." But she refused to move. She was a baobab tree, her roots deep in the soil of her grief and her resolve. The small crowd that had been waiting by the doorway, other villagers, farmers, old men with their own troubles, had fallen silent. They were watching, their eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. They knew this game. They had seen it played out countless times. They recognized the quiet corruption, the casual cruelty of men in small positions of power. Their silence was not one of apathy, it was the silence of witnesses. The tension in the small office crackled. It was the widow against the system. A lone woman against three men who held her future in their hands. Her voice rose, louder now, laced with the desperation of someone with nothing left to lose. I said, "Give me my husband's document." Now, the fear was there, a tremor beneath the anger. Fear of losing this last connection to him, fear of being cast out onto the street, fear for her children's future. The officers started to look uneasy. They weren't used to this. They were used to people who gave up, who paid the bribe, who came back next week, and the week after that until they were broken. They tried to intimidate her, one of them rising slightly from his chair. "Woman, do you want trouble? Go home before you regret this." That was when she played her final card. She slammed both of her hands flat on the wooden desk. The sound echoed in the silent room like a gunshot. Her eyes, filled with a pain that could shatter mountains, stared directly into the lead officer's soul. "If you do not give me my paper this very second," she said, her voice now carrying the weight of all the village ancestors, "I will shout. I will shout so loud that every man, woman, and child from here to the market square will gather at this door. I will tell them how you are trying to steal a widow's land. I will tell them your names." Panic flickered in the officer's eyes. It wasn't the fear of the law, but the fear of a public scene, the fear of shame. In a small community, a name was everything, and the accusation of stealing from a widow was a stain that would never wash away. The silent audience at the door shifted, their collective gaze a heavy weight. The lead officer broke. He grumbled under his breath, trying to save face. "Ah, here it is," he said with false cheerfulness, pulling the document out from under the pile of files. "It just got mixed up with these other papers. You old women are always so impatient." He pushed it across the desk towards her. She snatched it. She didn't say a word. She grabbed her land document with both hands, pulling it to her chest as if it were a lost child. She held it tight, the crisp paper a shield against her heart. Without another glance at the defeated men, she turned and walked towards the door. As she stepped back into the sunlight, the tears she had been holding back finally fell. They weren't tears of sadness, not entirely. They were tears of relief, of exhaustion, of a small, bitter victory won against a world that tried to crush her. She had fought her battle, and for today she had won. Clutching her husband's legacy, she began the long walk home, her head held high. The silent witnesses at the door parted to let her pass, their faces a mixture of pity, respect, and quiet admiration for the strength of a widow who refused to be cheated. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content that highlights the untold stories and quiet resilience of people around the world. Your support helps us bring these important narratives to light.